Welcome. We're on the red couch with Jacqueline Kulaga, victim advocate for SPARCC, Safe Place and Rape Crisis Center. She provides crisis intervention services to victims of domestic and sexual violence. Jacqui has been involved in the anti-trafficking movement with many organizations, including Somaly Mam Foundation, NYU Bellevue Victims of Torture Program in New York, and the Florida Coalition Against Human Trafficking. Jacqui, I am thrilled to have you on the red couch.
Thank you for having me.
So let's just start at the very beginning. Would you define rape?
Well, the legal definition, to kind of sum it up so that people can understand, is any forcible penetration, whether it's orally, anally, vaginally, by another organ or any other object, except for a bona fide medical purpose. We do also recognize sexual assault in the scope of whether it's rape, molestation, unwanted touching, sexual harassment, unwanted verbal, sexual verbal harassment. So anytime there's someone who doesn't consent or want anything to go further,
so that all falls under the umbrella of rape.
Well, rape is the penetration aspect. Sexual assault includes rape as well as things like molestation that don't penetrate and that sort of thing.
Okay. So in America, I looked it up. A woman is raped every 2 minutes.
Yes.
And then I tried to find the statistic for what it is internationally,
Right.
beyond the United States, and it was so impossible to find because they're hardly ever reported.
Right. And even in the States we see that, it's because of cultural expectations and gender stereotypes, you're not seeing many people report, and there are many different reasons why people don't report. So even the numbers that we do have, that's not even including those who have not come forward to express what had happened to them.
Right. So one of the things I got from looking up that international number was that there's a social stigma attached to a woman who has been raped.
Right.
So I'm wondering if you can speak to what the social stigma is.
Well, it is such a traumatizing experience to have to go through any rape or sexual assault. And I think, oftentimes people are trying to figure out answers, so they turn directly to the victim. What did you do, and why did you go here, and why this and why that? And I think really what we really need to begin focusing on is asking, why did someone think it was okay to violate a person in that way? So it really speaks a lot to how we view victims here, not just in the States, but internationally as well.
So how can we change, how can people, even just everyday people like myself, change that stigma?
Right. Well, I think first and foremost, it's believing someone when they do come forward. It's so hard to actually come forward and say to anyone that, I am a victim and I've been through something because of those, stereotypes and the backlash that comes with even speaking about something. So I think it's very important that we all begin to kind of change our view from asking why did the victim do this to, why did the perpetrator think that that was okay? Letting them know that it's a safe place to talk and express yourself, and believing them and letting them know that there is help. And also, I think many times people don't remember to let them know that you're not, there are other people that what you have been through, there are people that can support you. I'm here to support you. Encouraging them to speak to someone, come to SPARCC. If you're in Sarasota or DeSoto County, call SPARCC, see what, go see what your options are, and letting them know, most importantly, whatever you decide to do, I am here to support you no matter what, because that's what they need. They need support.
Right. We did a show with one of your colleagues on domestic violence, and she brought up the very same thing that you just said,
Right.
Believing the survivor.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a really important message,
Right.
to not doubt someone and question them, but to simply believe them is such a huge way to get them to feel comfortable and to continue and to get more help.
Absolutely. A lot of times people don't want to believe that, somebody, maybe, because oftentimes what we see with rape is oftentimes it's acquaintance.
Right.
You know, there is, you know, stranger rape, but what we do see is oftentimes rape victims know who their perpetrator is. And, you know, people start asking questions like, well, how could that person do that? Or that's a friend of yours, or, you know them, how, you know, they don't want to believe that that could happen.
Right.
And it's just important that we take a step back before we begin judging and before we begin making labels on things, to take a step back and really look at the bigger scope of the picture and say, this person is saying something happened to them. And I think that it's important for me to listen,
Right.
to have empathy, to give that support.
I think what you were saying about how women end up feeling like they contributed, partly because of how other people are reacting to them, and partly because of our own self-doubt and, my God, I did know him, and, or, you know, I'm just using the male-female example. I realize it's any gender.
It could be anyone, and
But rape is never the victim's fault.
No, it is never. It's never the victim's fault. You know, we don't blame, you know, a shop owner for having their store robbed.
Right.
We're not going around saying, well, why did you do this and why didn't you do that?
Right.
Because we know that the person who committed that crime was wrong. A rapist is wrong for raping. So, you know, we need to start focusing and changing that perspective of victim blaming into really trying to find justice and look at the bigger scope, saying you as a perpetrator decided to do something wrong. You didn't, you know, this person was clearly saying no, or they weren't able to consent, or whatever the case may be. You know, that's something that you need to be held accountable for your actions.
Why do you think that is? This is what I'm most interested in. Like, what you had a great example. You don't say to the shopkeeper, well, why weren't you paying better attention? Or why, you know, I mean, maybe somebody does, but it's unlikely.
Yeah.
And in this case, there's so much follow-up of, well, what were you wearing? Were you drinking? What did you do wrong?
Right, and you know, we shouldn't have to live our lives constantly monitoring, you know, every little move we make, thinking that someone's going to go and do something wrong to us. You know, unfortunately, we live in a world where bad things happen, but, you know, for a woman to feel that she can't wear certain shoes, or she can't have a drink, or, you know, she can't stay out late, you know, is, you know, it says a lot about our culture. And it says a lot about the idea of what, you know, our roles are, quote unquote, supposed to be. And if we only lived by those rules, then this wouldn't have happened. And that's not true. You know, rape can happen to anyone at any time. You know, married couples, you know, no one wants to, you know, not many people say, you know, your husband or, you know, your wife or whatever the case may be, you know, can't rape you. That's not true. You know, it just takes someone not wanting something to happen.
Right.
And, you know, not listening to what that request was.
Right. So, say someone experiences sexual assault. What are some of the common feelings that the person experiences?
In my experience with working with our participants, you know, I've seen a wide range of different emotions. And, you know, anything that person is experiencing is okay. They've just dealt with trauma, and now they're trying to get through that trauma the best that they can. So I've seen people who have completely detached themselves, you know, who try to block out what had happened. I've seen people who become extremely emotional. You know, there is no one particular way that a person will react to trauma, you know, just the same as any other trauma, you know, that someone might go through. And I think, you know, it's just important that that person have those feelings validated and understand that, you know, this is part of you getting through what the trauma that you have just been through. So,
and is there many stages that people can go, almost like a grieving process?
You know, there can be, you know, and each person is very different. You know, one person's journey is not going to be exactly like another's.
Right.
There might be people who, you know, are able to get through it for a couple of years and they'll be fine. And then there'll be that one incident that happens in their life. They might hear a song. They might hear, you know, smell a certain smell. They may see their rapist and it might come back and they might, you know, start from square one all over again. You know, it's it's very difficult to put, like a list per se, specifically like this is what someone will experience. But there's a wide variety of things. And I think one of the most important things that we as, advocates or just as friends, family can do for a victim, or I should say a survivor, because they've survived that trauma, is to validate those feelings and say what you're feeling is okay. It's okay to feel that. I understand that this is difficult for you. What can I do for you? Is there anything I can do for you? Can you call SPARCC? Can I help you in any way? And I think just keeping that door open is, I think, the most important thing, having that door open for that person so that when they are ready to come forward, when they are ready to talk, if they feel that they need that, then they know that they can turn to a friend or family member or to SPARCC.
Right. So you've seen, from all of the work that you've done, you've seen people come through such traumatic experiences, such difficult, really life-changing experiences, and you've seen people come to the other side.
Yep.
So it is possible.
Oh, absolutely.
To come to the other side.
Hope. There is so much hope, and there's at least for a lack of a better term, hope is the word that I keep coming back to.
Yeah.
Is there is so much hope. There's so much strength in someone's journey, and it will always seem difficult at first. Just being in a very dark place is a very difficult place to be. So the idea that, can I actually get to a place where there's light and there's happiness? It's difficult for someone to process that, but there is light at the end of the tunnel, to be cliche, I guess.
Yeah.
But there is a way into a place where you find peace, and having a support system is one of the key factors. And at SPARCC, that's something that I think that for anybody out there that feels that they don't have anybody to turn to, they don't have anybody to talk to, they're all alone, you're not alone. There are places like SPARCC, and even if it's not in Sarasota or DeSoto County, there are centers all over the country that offer that. And,
what would a person look up? Well, so we're going to have a hotline number, a national hotline number. So someone could call that, but if they wanted to Google rape crisis in their town?
Yeah, I know for Florida, you can go to, if you're not sure where your center might be, you can go to fcasv.org, and there's a section where you can locate your local sexual violence center.
Okay.
And they have a number for us at SPARCC. Our number is 941-365-1976. I always tell people the best way to remember that is that there are 365 days in the year, and our bicentennial is 1976.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
That's really good. So what are some of the reasons why people don't report when they've been raped?
There are so many different reasons why. Number one, the idea that someone's not going to believe them.
Right.
That fear, or even perhaps, the rapist might have said to them, their perpetrator might have said to them, if you tell anyone, I will, they make threats, I will kill you, I will hurt you, I will come after you. They might be a, affluent member of society, and maybe they feel like no one's going to believe that this person could have done something like this. There's so many different reasons, but I think when we really come down to it, it's the idea that in our society, we're constantly questioning victims. We're re-victimizing someone who has been through such trauma that for them, the risk to come forward is greater than the risk of actually, to express, what has happened. So I think, again, we keep circling around this cultural expectation and gender stereotypes. We keep circling back to this, but at the root of it all, that's the fear that they're not going to be believed.
Right. So are there things, obviously we can't control, like you said, every step we take, every move we make, and who's in a parking lot or whatever, but are there things that people can do? What are some things you can do to, say, lessen your risk factors or to create a more aware, safe environment for yourself?
Right. One thing I always like to just say is understanding what your personal boundaries are, understanding what you're okay with and what you're not okay with. You know, I always say, you know, there's this feeling that you get inside of you, that gut instinct that makes you feel whether something is right or something's not, you know, not right.
Yeah.
And if you can listen to your instinct, you know, the first thing I always say is if you can listen to that instinct, you know, try to follow it the best you can. You know, if you're going out, you know, there are many other things, you know, the buddy system. If you're going out at night or you're going someplace, have that buddy system, maybe have that emergency phone number. You know, again, we can't control the world around us, so
Right.
there's no, foolproof way to say that you can, stop this from at any time. But I think, you know, as someone who, as a woman at least for myself, just knowing what my personal boundaries are, knowing that wherever I'm going, I know that someone knows where I am. I have someone who's with me. If I feel like I'm not okay, I automatically make that phone call. And if you don't feel like something's okay, call 911. Call 911. You know, let law enforcement help you. That's, you know, part of their job too, and they want to help you. That's, you know, that's their role to keep you safe. So if all else fails, 911 if you can.
Right. I mean, those are good practical things to do. In terms of dating, like, I just want to address dating violence for a minute.
Yeah.
Because it's so huge.
It really is.
I mean, what are some red flags when you're dating someone or you're just starting to date someone that you should kind of note as a red flag?
I think, you know, when we're talking about healthy relationships, a healthy relationship will be built on trust and mutual respect. Once you start feeling like that's kind of getting broken down, I think that's when you start having to say to yourself, you know, this isn't right. And I think some of those things include, you know, when someone is very, very clingy right away, you know, they want you all to themselves, you know, if they're pressuring you to have sex or do anything that you're really not comfortable with, and the excuse is, well, you know, I hear it especially with younger couples, you know, everyone else is doing this and this is what, you know, this is what a relationship is about, and making the relationship more about the sexual aspect rather than the, you know, friendship that you're forming with someone. If you're starting to feel any of that pressure, you know, you don't have to override it. You don't have to say, oh, they're just really, really into me. They're so, you know, they love me so much. You know, if someone's being that possessive over you, that's something to kind of consider to consider right away.
Yeah, your colleague was talking even just with a slightly different subject, but domestic violence, but that's how it starts,
you know,
right?
And the funny thing is, you know, with domestic violence, you can see sexual violence.
Right.
You know, the two kind of are intertwined in certain aspects. So I think, you know, we will see a lot of overlap in a lot of these situations. Not all, but you do happen to see a lot of overlap here. I think also the name calling, the name dropping. I see this happening a lot when the survivor comes forward to talk about what had happened to them. If it's not this, if it's not the stereotypical idea of what people think a rape is supposed to be like, if it doesn't look like it comes out of Law and Order SVU,
Right.
you know, we start, you know, name bashing them, you know, words like slut or a whore or a variety of other names that we want to call someone.
Right.
And we see that happening too in dating, you know, if she wears a certain thing when she goes out, that's normal. You know, there are people, you know, if someone's calling you a name and saying you look like this or you look trashy or this, and starts degrading you as a human being, I think that's when you have to kind of reevaluate that relationship. If this person's making you more unhappy than making you happy, they're making you question yourself more than kind of building you up and making you feel like your best self,
Right.
then I think, you know, it's okay to kind of step back and say, you know what, I have to do what's best for me. I'm not feeling good about myself anymore, and I should reevaluate that.
So what are some of the messages in the media and the social norms that seem to support this violence, in particular against women?
I think not only we're just seeing general violence, but I think, you know, we have these video games. Trying to remember the name of that one. Grand Theft
I won't be able
Auto.
to help you. Oh,
Grand
I actually
Theft
have
Auto.
heard of that one.
Yes, Grand Theft Auto. You know, looking at there's a couple of these where you see clips in them where they have, you know, the girl who's working the street, the prostitute, and they will name bash her, and then they will, you know, rape her, and then the player gets to beat her up and kill her. You know, very disturbing stuff, and, you know, people make the excuse, well, it's just TV or it's just a video game. And that's fine and all, but, you know, to promote that type of thing is really kind of normalizing those type of behaviors. And I think we're at a point in our society right now, especially younger people, that are really thinking that a lot of things are okay. I mean, I'm guilty of watching these reality shows like The Real Housewives or, you know, Love and Hip Hop or whatever the show is that's on VH1. And they really promote violence, you know, women being violent with each other or name bashing each other and making that type of thing okay. It's not okay, and we're raising a generation to think that this is how you solve your problems, or if a guy doesn't get what he wants, then he could just take it, or that women want aggressive men. You know, there's a difference between being confident and being aggressive, and you know, we can blame media completely. We can say you're doing this and you're doing that, but I think it's twofold. I think it's just as much the media's responsibility as it is our responsibility at home. And I think keeping an open dialogue and an open communication about what we're watching and what we're experiencing and being able to say, you know, this is not reality. This is make-believe.
Right.
Even parents talking to their kids and saying, yeah, that's a television show. You know, how do you feel about it? Do you think that that's real? But explaining the process and explaining that, you know, this is cut up. This is you know, this is television. It's copied and pasted. It's formulated to fit a certain idea. But that's not reality, and making that clear. So it's the media's responsibility as much as it is ours.
Well, speaking of the media, this has been a huge week in the media.
It has.
Cover of the New York Times yesterday, today. I just want to read it. White House sets agenda on sexual assault. And the article was talking about how they released guidelines increasing pressure on universities to combat sexual assaults on campuses. So what is the price that women and society in general pay when they're encouraged to be silent and when they're not properly protected and supported?
You know, we're just re-victimizing people, and we're normalizing the situation. We're basically saying that this is okay. We're saying, don't talk about your trauma. It's not that important to us if we continually tell them not to come forward and not to speak. And then we're also telling perpetrators that it's okay to do what you're doing. Continue to, you know, commit these crimes, continue to promote more violence. So
1 in 5 girls, it said females, was very specific on the task force that's been created. 1 in 5 female students experiences sexual assault on a college campus.
Right.
That's 20%. That's huge numbers.
Exactly. And, you know, especially in the college setting when you have all of these parties and, you know, you're meeting all these new people and you're you know, putting a group together, you know, you're going to be put in a more vulnerable setting.
Right.
But we're also, you know, we're normalizing certain behaviors that, you know, the one common thing I hear is, well, we were at a party and we were both drinking. I don't know what the big deal is. Can you get behind a vehicle when you're drinking? No, you can't. You can't make that judgment. The same way someone can't make a judgment to decide whether they can consent or not.
Right.
Now, the laws are created to, you know, oftentimes people say things like, well, I know the law says that if someone's been drinking, they can't consent, but, you know, that's really not fair. The laws are not created to punish people. The laws are created to protect victims, because there are people who wake up who were drugged, who had their drinks, you know, spiked, who, you know, who were given alcohol, especially in a college setting when people are, you know, you see the movies of all these parties and, you know, we're going to get really, really drunk and then do all these crazy things. You know, these things happen to people, and sometimes people wake up and they say, I don't know what happened, but I know that it wasn't right. And I think that says a lot. And, you know, the fear of coming forward again, like we talked about earlier, is anybody going to believe me with
Right.
all those stereotypes that we were just talking about earlier? So I think when we start silencing people, we're basically saying that it's okay. And I think the most important thing we can do is speak up, say something. If it doesn't look right to you, if you're wrong, then you know what? The worst thing you did was make a phone call.
Right,
Or the worst thing
right.
you did was, you know, step forward and attempt to help.
Right. Yeah. So what's the most important message that you want people to know about rape and sexual assault?
I think it's important to let people know that there is hope. There are people who are there to speak to. There are many of women and men and, you know, young people who have been through the same thing that you have been through, and you're not alone. You know,
Yeah.
I think so many times it's important just to let them know you are not alone in this. There are people out there. We are listening, and you know, we will be here no matter what you decide.
Well, I am so grateful for you and what you're doing.
Thank you.
Do you have a juicy secret to living a happy and successful life, given all that you've seen and done in your lifetime?
Yeah, for me, it's, you know, just being honest with myself, being honest with the people around me. I always promote that, you know, once you can really look at yourself and really, you know, trust your instincts and trust what you feel is best for you, I think you have just opened your doors up to experiencing so many more positive things. So, honesty.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us
On the Red Couch.